Hello y'all, and welcome to the YoungFolkKnits channel. Today, let's have a little knit and a chat. Hello y'all, and welcome to the YoungFolkKnits channel. My name is Casey, and here I mainly like to chat about my love for knitting, spinning, and all things fiber arts. I also like to share about living on a small farm here in Arkansas with my husband and our children, where we are beekeepers. We love raising chickens, animals, gardens, and spending lots of time outdoors here in the foothills of the Ozarks. So if any of that sounds like your cup of tea, then make sure and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on any new content. Today is Pi Day. It is March 14th, 2023, and it is a balmy 48 degrees here in Arkansas. We had a freeze warning for the first time in quite a few weeks last night and into this morning. It's been pretty frigid up until this point today, so I've been wearing this snuggly warm sweater, which is store-bought, but I really like it and I would love to knit one similar. They call it shaker stitch, but it looks like a brioche to me. I need to look up, is shaker stitch the same thing as brioche? Because it certainly looks like it is. Either that or fisherman's rib. And it's just really old and cozy and comfy, so I don't worry at all about wearing it around outside or while I'm cooking and getting it dirty. It has a lot of cotton in it, so I just throw it in the washing machine and it's fine. Today I wanted to do a little bit of a knit and chat. We haven't chatted about topics that y'all have very kindly left for me either on Instagram or YouTube in a while, so I thought it would be fun to do that today. But before we start on those topics, I just wanted to catch you up on what all is going on here. The Bougie Sweatshirt Knit Along has about 2 weeks left. It goes until the last day of March. So that is really exciting. I'm still seeing some fabulous sweaters, which I'm loving. And I will be giving away prizes for that after April 1st. Yeah. After April 1st. Also, the Color Me Happy Cow, which is just a fun and super relaxed knit along that I am hosting with Taji, has just got a few days left, exactly 1 week left. So that's still enough time to knit like a cowl or a collar to join in on the fun with Taji and I. I am really concerned as to whether or not I'm going to be able to actually finish my coffee run collar, which is a pattern by Samantha Guerin, and that is because I have had 3 test knits. I just finished one and I'm trying desperately to finish 2 others by the end of this month, so I haven't had a lot of time to knit on anything else. One of those test knits I'm actually going to be working on today. It is the Weronika sweater, which is a pattern by Alex from Veron Rose. I had actually got to the point where I had split for sleeves and realized that I had done something totally wrong on the raglan increases and the sleeve increases because I wasn't paying attention. So I've ripped back and I'm gonna try to quickly fix that and get back to the point of being split for the sleeves. I don't think it'll take me very long because I didn't have to rip back all the way. But that is what I am going to be knitting on while we chat today. For anyone who needs to hear this though, stop, take a deep breath, relax your neck and shoulders. Okay, I'm ready. All right, first question. Have you ever traveled outside the US? And if so, where? That's a fun question. So, yes, I have traveled outside the US. My family, as in my grandparents and my parents, love to travel. So I was raised doing a lot of traveling. I've been to quite a few places in the United States, but not every state. I've never been to Hawaii. I've never been to Alaska. I would love to go to both. See, what other states have I not been to? There's a few states I haven't been to. But as far as other countries, I have been to France, Ireland, to Italy, Mexico, Canada. And I feel like I'm leaving one out, but I can't recall it at the moment. I hope that as my kids get older, we will be able to start doing some more traveling again. I got a couple about cooking. First of all, favorite dinner you make for your family, favorite dinner for warm weather. I am so excited that it is about to be garden season because a lot of my favorite meals are from fresh garden foods. My number one favorite summertime meal that my family absolutely loves is Caprese. There is just absolutely nothing better than a garden tomato with a big ball of fresh mozzarella cheese that I will slice up, put the tomatoes on top of, then I will put some salt, pepper, a little garlic. Fresh basil leaves from the garden are also a must. And then I drizzle that with olive oil and balsamic vinegar. It's so good, especially with a loaf of hot sourdough bread or ciabatta bread. It's just absolutely amazing. Another warm weather meal that my family loves is fish tacos. I love to get cod, and I am gluten-free, but sometimes if I don't grill it, I will fry it up in a gluten-free batter. And then I make a sauce for it. I don't really follow a recipe, but I do about 2 cups of mayonnaise, depending on how spicy you like it, 2 to 3 adobe chipotle peppers in sauce, which you can get in a can. And then I add in some minced garlic and a tablespoon or 2 of fresh lime. Oh my goodness, that sauce is heavenly. I blend it all up in a food processor, and then I will make a slaw to go on the tacos where I just use like a head of cabbage that I will chop up very finely, and I will add in some red onion, and then I drizzle that with apple cider vinegar, olive oil, and sprinkle some salt and pepper on top. It is so good. And then last but not least, I will cut up some mango and I will just pour over that a little bit of ready-made salsa so I don't have to make the salsa up. Whether it's canned salsa that I have from the previous summer, or if I buy some, it's still just as good. So then I will put all of that together in a tortilla and sprinkle with some cheddar cheese, and voila, it is amazing. Highly recommend it for a summertime meal. Knitting tool or pattern, garment construction, Antihaul. Just a second. Okay, that's a really good question. First of all, I usually research everything I buy quite a bit. So before I've bought something, I am pretty sure that it is the one that I want, something that I will use, something that maybe has really good reviews, highly rated. So I don't end up getting a lot of things that I just absolutely hate and don't use. One thing I will share that I have been extremely disappointed in, and I don't know if it is just my experience. If you have one of these, please tell me if it's just me. So if you know me, then you know I love a good aesthetic. I'm all about the wood. I have this super ugly old plastic ball winder, and I was absolutely in love with the wooden Luca ball winders. And it is beautiful, but I feel like I've got a problem with my drive band here, this rubber band. I think maybe it's stretched out, or else there's something wrong with this, the way it's seated, because whenever I'm winding a cake of yarn, it will just slip. The drive band just slips and then it doesn't wind. I'll see if I can show you. Of course it's gonna work right now. Anyway, it slips on me a lot and I don't know why. I don't feel like the drive band is stretched out, and it started doing it from the first day I had it. But yeah, there we go. See? Spinning it, nothing's happening. So that's very frustrating. If you have any tips on that, please let me know. I basically do not use this at all. I just totally and completely use my plastic ball winder. So maybe I should return this. It's probably been too long. I'm the worst at returning anything. But yes, that has been disappointing. Another thing I have found over the years that I have not enjoyed is needles with short tips. And one of the reasons that you might need a needle with a short tip is, for instance, if you're doing small circumference knitting. Obviously, if you're going to do socks and you want to knit them on 9-inch circulars, your needle tips are like that long, and that's okay. I don't love that, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the interchangeable needles that have a needle tip of like 4 inches. Now, you're probably going to use that whenever you're using 16-inch circulars for a hat, for instance, or maybe you're using it for a cowl or the collar of a sweater. But what I don't like is then if you get your interchangeables in those short needles, everything that you make is then going to be with a short needle tip. And the reason I don't like it is because the end of the needle ends up hitting me right here in the meaty part of my hand, and it starts hurting. It starts hurting really bad right there at the join of the end of the needle to the cord. And I find that I can't knit as long. It's very uncomfortable. I have more hand strain. And because of that, I have found myself gravitating towards my fixed circular ChiaoGoo needles, which I use for almost everything. So if I have to knit a collar or a hat, which you could do magic loop, I just don't like magic loop that much. So you could always do magic loop and not even bother with it. But I will find that if I start off with my interchangeables, which I have a set from Addie. So when I need the 16-inch circulars, for instance, at the beginning of a sweater for a top down, like the collar, the second that I'm able to switch to a 24-inch or 32-inch circular needle, I will immediately move the project onto my fixed circular ChiaoGoos with the full length metal tip, and it's so much easier on my hands. I just really don't like the short needle tips. All right, next up, how do you store your yarn stash? So I do not have a pretty yarn stash storage system right now. Right now, I store all my yarn in big plastic Sterilite storage containers, and they have a lid that locks, and I feel like hopefully they're safe. So I have like 3 of those stacked on top of each other. It's so ugly. And in the top one, I keep all my different project bags that have a project going in it, and that whole tub is literally full of project bags. That's sad. However, my husband and I are going to try to build a yarn cabinet. If it's not the rooster, it's a jet. So I saw that on IKEA, they had some really awesome, nicely priced bookshelf cabinet type storage that I think would be perfect for my yarn. First of all, we have no IKEA near us. The closest IKEA is Memphis, which is like 3 hours away, and they do not carry the bookcase that I wanted at that IKEA, and they won't ship me one either. Because of that, I think we might try to build one, and maybe my father-in-law can help because he has like a whole woodworking shop at his house. But that's actually been something that my husband and I have been talking a lot about lately, because a lot of my yarn overflow and project overflow ends up on the floor all around my Sterilite containers, which is so ugly. Also, I find that whenever I store them stacked on top of each other in the Sterilite containers, it's very hard to get into the bottom ones, and because of that, I forget what yarn I have, and I'll end up ordering new yarn, when if I had everything out in front of me, easily visible, I feel like I would much more readily use what I have and not forget about it. Okay, I had quite a few comments about gauge. I can measure gauge in the same piece 10 times and get different numbers. How is this possible? Another one was, is gauge personal to each individual, or is there a standard across the board for all to reach? Man, gauge is a tricky subject. And the reason I say that is because I do not think that everyone naturally has the same gauge, for sure. My best friend Becky, whenever we knit the same thing, and we have knit the same thing multiple times, my gauge is huge compared to hers. And what that means is, if you had a 4-inch square that we both knit, mine will have fewer stitches in it because my stitches are bigger and looser, and hers will have more stitches in it because hers are tighter and smaller, so there's more that fit into it. And what that means is that if you're knitting a sweater and your gauge is like mine, where it's very loose, then you're going to come out with something bigger than maybe what the designer had if your gauge is looser. Whereas if your gauge is tighter than the designer's, then your sweater could be too small. And that is why we swatch. But here are my thoughts on swatching, and I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When I do a swatch, and it's a 4-inch to 6-inch square, and then I block it, it is not going to be the same gauge as my finished sweater. The reason for that is, usually you block your gauge flat, you are blocking something very small that doesn't have a lot of weight on it. So you're not going to get a whole lot of changes. Whereas if you knit an entire garment and you wet block it, it's so heavy, first of all, that when you soak it in water and you move it to block it, it's probably going to stretch out just from that fact alone of moving your wet sweater. Second of all, as you wear your sweater, you have a lot of weight on it. So especially the upper portion of your sweater is going to stretch and pull. You're going to end up with a different gauge here. Whenever your sweater pulls down like this, it's going to pull in from the side some. If you measure your gauge here, then it's probably going to have more stitches here horizontally and less stitches vertically. Whereas if you measure your gauge at the bottom of your sweater, it's not going to have as much weight pulling down on it, and you're going to have more stitches vertically than you do here. Okay, so yeah, you're probably gonna get a different gauge measuring at different points in a sweater. I still think a swatch can be valuable though, even if it's not gonna be exactly the same as your finished piece. It can still definitely give you information. Like, do you like the fabric that it's giving you? How close are you to the gauge? Is it wildly off? So if you're knitting a pattern that has been designed by someone and you want it to fit, then you need to try to reach their gauge. If you're not wanting to figure out math and adjust everything to a different gauge. So let's just say you just want to knit the pattern. Then you need to try to reach the pattern designer's gauge. The goal here is not for us to all reach this specific gauge that is the perfect gauge. That is not the case. Instead, we all have our own natural gauge that we're going to knit at, and that is okay. Instead of trying to change the way you knit, if you want to knit a pattern and you just want to knit it as written, you don't want to try to do the math and, you know, make a certain gauge that's different work for that pattern. So to do that, you can adjust your needle size. You can go up a needle size or you can go down a needle size, and you can adjust the type of yarn you're using. Maybe a furrier yarn like a Surrey or a mohair might give you a bigger gauge. I think that the real answer to changing your gauge is the needle size. And the reason I say that is because changing your yarn is going to more change your fabric than it will change your gauge. I'm not saying it can't change your gauge, but you know what I mean. So I don't think you should try to knit tighter. I don't think you should try to knit looser. Like, I think that you should change your tools to try to get a specific gauge. And I also don't believe in trying to force a certain yarn into the specific gauge. There are some patterns that I will look at the gauge and I'm like, how is it humanly possible that they got that gauge for this pattern? I can't. And so you know what? I'm not even going to try. If I really, really want to, then I will do the math and change it for my gauge. That will work. But I'm not going to try to force a gauge on a yarn that I can't make happen. Tattoos. Do you have any? No, I don't have any. Favorite fiber for warm weather. Okay, I absolutely love a cotton fiber. I love a linen fiber, and I hate working with either of those by themselves. I feel like my hands and my wrists are gonna fall off. They start hurting so bad if it's a long project. So because of that, I really love blends. Sandnes Garn has, Knitting for Olive. They have a blend that is cotton and wool, and I absolutely love that. The cotton content, I do still feel it, but I like the wool in it. It gives it a little bit more of a spring, and it's easier on my hands. I really am loving the blend of 10% linen and 90% wool. I like that a lot, and I've got a few things that I think I'm going to try to make this summer with that. But you know, merino wool is known for being sweat wicking, so even if you don't blend that with another fiber, I think that fiber in itself, it's still a wonderful fabric for the summertime. Just maybe not too thick, maybe like a fingering weight. Those are all of the questions I'm going to chat about today. There are some more really good ones, so I'm going to save that for next time. I was going to announce the winner for the Lamb & Kid yarn because I see that there are still a lot of people commenting. I want to give everybody a little bit more time to enter, so I'm going to try to announce the winner next week. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch last week's episode for a chance to win a skein of Lamb & Kid Momo. There's been so many test knit calls lately for such amazing sweaters, but I'm trying my best to ignore them because I can't even finish these test knits. I'm sure hoping that I finish these test knits on time. Will I stay strong? In the words of Oscar Wilde, I can resist anything but temptation. On that note, I am going to bid you adieu. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you had something fun you were able to work on while we chatted, and I look forward to talking with y'all again soon. Until then, happy knitting, y'all.